Hello and welcome to another episode of the M42 Adventures Podcast. I am your host, Rick Trimmer, and today we have one. Again, these are people that Chase has been lining up for me, and I'm glad he has because he kind of digs into different realms and different things that maybe I would. And the one he found today her name is Dr. Leah Kaylor. She's an FBI sleep specialist. And again, it's not somebody that I necessarily would search out, and so I'm excited that Chase did find this one because sleep, I had a lot of conversations just recently in Alaska. My father suffers from poor sleep, and lots of people do. I mean, it's a very common thing. And so I'm excited to dive into this one. I'm glad Chase found her, and let's jump into this conversation. I'm actually very excited. I haven't done a podcast in how long, Chase? Like it's been a bit. So we do with M42 Adventures, we do adventures all over the world.
How exciting for you. That's amazing.
It's been fun. So I was just in Hawaii for June.
Perfect.
And then I just barely got back from Alaska yesterday. Last night. So I was in Alaska for most of July. So that's kind of what we do, is try to get people, out on adventures and exploring this world and doing fun stuff. And a big component of that is, that's why Chase, when he had reached, I lost audio, Chase.
I'm here.
Chase is messing with my audio. Is health. And, if you're not healthy, if you're not, there's the finances,
you're not going
right?
anywhere.
And then there's your health. And if you're not healthy, you're not going to want to go do anything. And sleep is, I have some very good, I want to ask you some things on this that hit home with me. And so, so Leah, it's Leah, right?
Yes.
Leah Kaylor, and you are an FBI sleep specialist psychiatrist. What is that?
Yeah, so I'm a licensed clinical psychologist and a prescribing psychologist, and I'm on staff, so that means that I'm fully embedded. I'm fully in the office, whether you like it or not.
Okay.
And I've been with the Bureau for well over 5 years now, and before being at the Bureau, I was at the Memphis VA Medical Center, and that's where I started in the sleep clinic and had no idea that it was going to explode in the best way possible that it has. And I think because of being a mental health professional, I think that that's very scary for some people, especially whenever it comes to law enforcement and first responders. But whenever I started at the Bureau, my supervisor had asked me, okay, what's going to be your thing? And I said, well, how about sleep? I had just gotten off of a sleep rotation, was teaching veterans how to do sleep hygiene, how to wear their CPAP mask, because a lot of people are afraid of that, treating nightmares, all kinds of good stuff. And so I said, well, how about we make sleep my thing, and then people get a chance to know me. They're not afraid of me, hopefully, and then we can kind of open up the door for other things. So my specialties are sleep and trauma, and those two go hand in hand, but oftentimes it's sleep that comes in the door first, and then later trauma almost always presents itself in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, and I don't think, and I think this probably, as you get older, this is more prevalent, but how important sleep is. I was just, like I said, I've been on these trips I went to Hawaii with 16 gentlemen, went to Alaska with 16 people, and we talked a lot about sleep. And
That's so exciting to hear.
I know. I didn't even know about this podcast. Chase had just told me a few days ago, and so it wasn't like I was prepping for that. It was natural. It was just people who, I actually had a buddy who, you just mentioned CPAP. And, again, I think this happens as you get older, but he packs his little CPAP out to Hawaii.
Yes.
And he was raving about it. He says, he literally said it's changed his life.
When you wear it and you're not afraid of it and you kind of get used to it, because there absolutely is a learning curve, I hear people tell me all the time that, I didn't know what it was like to sleep, or it changed my life. I hear things like that all the time once people kind of get over that learning curve of wearing it and adjusting.
I think people, from what some of the conversations I had in Alaska, that's one thing with me is, do you know anything about me, any background on me at all?
Honestly, I don't. I'm also walking in blind because I'm kind of excited to get to know you too.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. So I actually retired when I was 36. So I'm 45 now.
Stop. Are you like in the FIRE movement? Because I'm well on my way to FI.
I am, but I didn't know it. I don't even know that it existed 9 years ago, but
fair enough.
Yeah.
Well,
So
this is so exciting.
So 9 years ago, I sold 4 construction companies,
Okay.
and I've been traveling the world with my wife and kids to over 70 countries. Yeah. And
Oh,
so,
I'm so impressed. I think I want to be friends with you when this call's over.
yeah. I was actually thinking my wife has a podcast and you should go on hers as well. So I'll connect you two, but
I'd love it.
hers has been going for a few years. It's a little bigger than mine, but anyway, but that's that's my story. And the reason I wanted to retire,
Yeah.
like I tell everybody, number 1 is spend time with family, but number 2 was I hate waking up early. I
Hey, fair
literally,
enough. You're being
I
honest.
love my sleep. I love being in
Me
control of my
too.
schedule.
Yes.
And so, but we were talking about that in Alaska. I was telling that story, saying, hey, one of the reasons I retired was I haven't set an alarm clock in years unless it's for a
How
flight
beautiful
or
is
something.
that?
Yeah, it's been
My
nice.
goodness.
But the people that I was with were like, well, I only need 6 hours of sleep. I only need 5. I only need 7, And I says, how do you know? How do you know? Have you gone 60 days with 8 hours of sleep or 9 hours of sleep? And they're like, oh, there's no way I could get that. And that's one of those things where I think people have just come to accept on a personal, on their level, is I'm good with 6 hours. And it's like, you may be able to function, but what would you be if you had 7 or 8 or 9?
I agree with you completely. I think that people are so stuck in having a crap night's sleep and being there for such a long period of time that they don't know what it's like to experience good sleep or to consistently get that, or what it would feel like, brain and body and cognitive functioning, emotional functioning, all of that, to give themselves. And you had asked, oh, well, how do you know? How do you measure this? This is an interesting question, and a lot of people don't have the luxury of being able to do this, but there is a way to do it. And that would be if you're, say, for example, like on a vacation or you're on leave, and not that you have your schedule crammed or that you have to get up early to do this or that, but just allowing yourself the freedom of being able to fall asleep when you want and waking up when you want and consistently being able to do that. And that is your body being able to communicate with you with how much sleep it actually needs. And, there are a lot of people out there that unfortunately just don't have the luxury of being able to do an experiment like that and really see what they need.
Yeah. And like you said, I think, you have a lot of friends that are people that I know that are unhealthy, right? They have like a bad back or bad knees, and they're like, it's just the way it is. It's just the way it is. And I'm like, well, you're also 50 pounds overweight. If you could lose 50 pounds, your back might not hurt. And so you see people who lose weight and they're like, man, I feel great.
Right.
I'm more mobile, I have more energy. I can play with my kids. For some reason, it feels like with sleep, people just don't think that they can lose the 50 pounds, so to say. The analogy, they don't know how to get and that's like talking to my dad, and I want to get on him, talk about him a little bit, where I have these friends and people in my life who just don't know how to get their body to get more sleep. With exercise or with losing weight, it's like, okay, I got to eat better. I got to go to the gym. But I think people don't know how to get more sleep. You hear darken your room, turn off your phone, but a lot of those things just, my dad says I just lay there and stare at the ceiling and just, my brain won't turn off and I can't get into it. And so,
Yeah.
I'm interested to see, you hear all the different, ways. CPAP was one that I had never even thought about. I knew that was a thing, but I kind of took it with, more health, which sleep and health are one in one, but
Right.
not making you sleep better. I don't know how do you think of a CPAP, Chase? Do you think of it that way, or do you think of it as a tool to sleep better?
Well, I honestly didn't realize what happened to people that suffer from the things that CPAP offers, like, stopping breathing in the middle of their night and things like that. So I didn't realize what that did to the body until, after it started happening to me. I don't use a CPAP machine and I found other ways to get past it, but like not being able to sleep because of that, you don't realize that you're not sleeping because you're asleep, but your body's waking up. And so it's just this kind of mishap communication between, what you're realizing you're doing and what you're actually doing.
Yeah, sleep's a weird one because it's a hard thing to track.
Yeah.
It's a hard thing to really know what's happening.
It is. Can I jump in and say a couple of different things, because you guys are
100%, yeah.
jogging my memory. So
Yeah.
With the pain, I think it's really important for people to also know, yes, there's lots of different things that you can do as far as physical exercise and diet, but pain and sleep are also very highly connected as well. So when you're sleeping poorly, your pain perception is going to be significant and things are going to feel worse. So when you're sleeping better, if you're already someone who experiences pain, say for example that maybe there's not a whole lot that you can do about it, maybe there's some type of old injury or maybe some type of arthritis or something along those lines, your pain will improve if you're getting better sleep. So that's just something to take in mind that I think a lot of people don't realize. And then whenever it
That
comes to CPAP, go ahead.
that's so interesting because you're
Yeah.
absolutely. I've never thought of it with pain, but you think about it with relationships. You know, it's like if I don't sleep good, I'm short with my kids.
Right.
Me and my wife fight more. You know, work's worse. That's exactly right. I can see that where, you know, if
Sleep
your back's
touches
hurting and you're
everything.
tired, your back's gonna hurt worse because you're tired. It's
Exactly.
gonna elevate that. So that's very interesting.
Yeah. And then with regard to CPAP, I'm just going to give like a little, in a nutshell,
I love it.
education for anyone who might be listening and who's not really sure. A lot of times whenever people are in bed for a full night, so they're giving themselves the opportunity to rest, and they wake up and they just feel like they're unrefreshed. And that happens day after day after day, and they're feeling fatigued, they're feeling exhausted, they don't know what's going on, but they're sleeping at night and they're giving themselves ample opportunity. Those folks are the ones who really need to consider being having some type of sleep study or speaking to a medical professional about obstructive sleep apnea, because what's happening when we're talking about obstructive sleep apnea is that the person is sleeping. However, what's happening is that the muscles in the throat and the neck and the tongue are relaxing, and so that it's kind of closing off the airway, maybe partially or maybe completely, so that the air is not flowing in the way that it should. And so this signals up to the brain, and the brain starts to panic and wakes us up, obviously, because we're not getting air. We're essentially suffocating while we're sleeping. And so some of those awakenings are so small that you're not aware of them, and then some are much larger, but oftentimes this goes hand in hand with snoring. So a lot of people who snore, this is basically like the major red flag that people are knowing. And I think that it's good that we know that, because oftentimes the person themselves may not realize, like you're saying, they may just think, oh, well, I'm not a good sleeper. I'm just crappy asleep, and it's been this way for as long as I can remember. But oftentimes people who have obstructive sleep apnea, they don't realize it. It's a partner, it's a roommate, it's a family member who's like, hey, your
You're
snoring
dying.
is unbelievable.
You died in the night.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
oftentimes with the snoring, then there's kind of like this gasping for air. And those are some major, major red flags whenever it comes to obstructive sleep apnea. So I just want to put that out there for anyone who's listening, and maybe this may be your sign to go speak to a medical professional about having a sleep study done.
Well, and what I didn't realize, so I went to Alaska a couple years ago, and we invited my parents invited their friends, and they were older, and they're both on a CPAP machine, but it's with oxygen. And so we're in Homer, Alaska, and they actually had to go. They found an oxygen store in Homer, Alaska, and they went and rented a tank for the week. And that was my introduction to a CPAP machine. And then my buddy came out to Hawaii, and doesn't need oxygen. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and so he's like, dude, mine's tiny. It doesn't need all this gear and stuff. And so that's another thing for people to realize is, there's different levels. Obviously, I didn't
There's
know that.
different levels, and I think that we're getting better and better with technology, but there's also something called BiPAP too. And
Mm,
not to go down like a super rabbit hole, but with CPAP, it's continuous positive airway pressure. So the air is constantly coming at you. And for some folks, it feels like a lot. It feels overwhelming, almost like drinking out a fire hose, if you will.
mhm.
And so a lot of people find that kind of intolerable. But with BiPAP, it's not nearly as much. So it almost breathes with you, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
And so that might be more acceptable for some folks who have tried CPAP and just, I don't want to say it doesn't work for them, but it feels intolerable because the air is just so much. So for those who are listening, BiPAP might be an option for you too to explore.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, for some reason, I don't know why it is, but it's just the way it is. But when you hear something, my buddy, he's my same age. We have a lot of similarities in life. I trust him, I relate with him. And so when he was telling me, I was listening, and so were the other, not at that week, there was 8 other people there. And I really opened my eyes because he's a high functioning, very financially successful person, even in family. But he was like, dude, it's changed my life. He says it's like one of the top 3 things that have changed my
Yeah.
life. And I'm like, whoa, bro, that's a big statement, from, and so I want people to hear that, where
Yes.
it's one of those things where I think, like I said in the beginning, I think people kind of uh, accept that, like
Mm-hmm.
you said, they're just like, I'm a bad sleeper. This is just the way it is. Or they even
Yeah.
justify it. Like, dude, in Alaska, I had a gentleman there that kept getting up early and waking me up. And I'm like, bro, why are you waking up at 5 a.m.? And he's like, dude, I just do, And I'm like, dude, you're getting like 5 hours of sleep. And he's like, that's all I need. And I'm like, is it though? And that's where we had that pretty good conversation. I'm like, have you ever felt what 8 hours feels like? And he's like, my body won't let me. It's just the way it is. And it's like, oh, I don't know really how to have that conversation once they've accepted it. But I
Mm-hmm.
encourage people to, we actually got on the internet and Googled, and I'm like, bro, you need 7 to 9 hours. Like
There you go.
it's right here.
Average adult. Yes. 7 to 9
Yeah.
hours.
And
Yes.
I mean, I'm like,
And
that's science.
it's not only that, I think it's just our culture and our society. And this is a much broader conversation about just the 24/7 of everything. And I think when we get to that, there's so much push, there's so much hustle culture, there's so much where maybe sleep feels boring or it feels like something that we don't need, when in actuality that couldn't be further from the truth, because what your brain and body are doing at night and can only be doing at night during sleep are some of incredible functions that absolutely need to happen. And I will do lectures all the time and I'll ask people, what do you think the definition of sleep deprivation is? And do you guys want to take a guess before I tell you?
I don't know, just not enough sleep. Like
Yeah.
less than 7 hours. I don't know.
Exactly. So whenever it comes to the American Academy of Sleep Medicine, they're saying that, yes, less than 7 hours. And I would imagine that a lot of people who are listening, and it's the same thing when I give lectures in person, people are kind of like, oh, really? I couldn't tell you the last time I got 7 hours. So it kind of just blows me
100%.
away of how much people kind of just throw out sleep and discount it, when in actuality, and that's also why we titled the book what we did, if sleep were a drug, how incredible it would be. It would probably be illegal, or you probably couldn't afford it. Like,
Yeah.
it's just so incredible if you really dive deeply into all the functions of sleep.
Yeah, it's I think, like you said, it's one of those things where it's just kind of disregarded. And
Yes.
I'm a big person on podcasts and books and studying and trying to get better in life. And on almost every list of high achieving people, it says try to get 8 hours of sleep. It just says, it's like, it's drink, what is it, 2 gallons, a gallon and a half
At
of
least a
water,
gallon.
get sleep. Things, it's not work. You know, that's one thing that really happened a lot with us in the beginning of our travels, and even now, I guess more so, or as well. But Americans are obsessed, like you just touched on.
Yeah.
Like in Alaska, we were just in Alaska, and people are like, "Bro, what are we doing next? What's next? What's next?" And I'm like, "Dude, we're in Alaska. This isn't Vegas. This is about sitting on the deck, looking at the view. We go fish in the morning, we kind of chill out for a few hours in the afternoon, we go fish at night at the rivers. But most people have a hard time slowing down, especially Americans. We get that a lot with our
Yes.
society, where it's always, I used to brag to my dad uh, when I was trying to, make my money. I'd call my dad and be like, Dad, I worked 80 hours this week. I worked 84 hours. I worked 79 hours.
Yeah.
And I was actually talking to a little old man in Italy. And he it was like first couple years of our travels, and he says, you Americans, you brag about how much you work. And I actually ended up reading a book a little bit later. I can't remember the title of it, but
4-hour work week?
that's the one that changed my life.
Yeah.
That is the one that absolutely changed the direction of my life. It wasn't that one, but that one's got a lot of this in there. But there was actually a sentence in this book that said, you're failing. If you can't do your job in 40 hours, you're literally failing. If it takes you 48 hours, and I thought that was where it kind of triggered for me, where it's like, man, I'm going to start bragging that I can do my job in 10 hours,
Yeah.
9 hours, 20 hours, whatever you can.
Mm-hmm.
That to me is more impressive than somebody who's like, it took me 80 hours to get to here. It's like, man, if you could figure out how to do it in 20, and I think that goes into sleep. It's like I can get enough sleep
Absolutely.
in 5 hours, and it's like, dude, you're okay to get 7 or 8. It's fine. You're not missing
What,
anything.
well, and one of the things that I like to tell people, and this is, there will be lots of people listening to this episode, and I'm talking about the normal, average, healthy sleeper. There will be people who are listening who do have a sleep disorder. But when it comes to sleep, when you're cutting like that, you're really cutting out very important functions. So just to kind of give like a very high level overview, when we go into sleep, we're cycling through a couple of different stages. So we've got light sleep, deep sleep, and REM sleep. And people have probably heard about all of these stages, but maybe we're not that familiar with what they do and why they're so important. So whenever it comes to deep sleep, that for the normal, average, healthy sleeper, our biggest chunk is happening the early hours of the night. So as we're falling asleep, we're going to go to light sleep, and then we're going to spend the biggest chunk of time in our deep sleep. And I like to think of deep sleep as being very physically restorative. It's when our muscles relax. It's whenever our blood pressure goes down. It's when those vessels are able to relax. It allows our heart to relax. All of our organs that we ask to work so hard all day, every day, that's when they're getting this promised rest break. Because otherwise, we're digesting, or we're doing this, or we're doing that. So sleep is this time for restoration. And then we'll move through and towards the time when your alarm clock is going to go off. That's when we get the most amount of REM. And REM stands for rapid eye movement sleep. And REM is kind of very different. You can think about it more emotionally and mentally restorative. One cool thing that's just really, really fascinating about sleep is, again, if you're a normal, average, healthy sleeper, your body should paralyze itself during REM sleep. There are some people who have a disorder where that doesn't happen, and every now and again someone will introduce themselves to me and they have this disorder. But nonetheless, your body should be paralyzed. And it's
Wow.
because your brain is so incredibly active. This is the time where dreams most often occur. And as we know, dreams are kind of bizarre and fantastical and things that could never happen in reality. So Mother Nature has kind of paralyzed us, called REM atonia, so that you don't act out your dreams, which is very interesting. But I want to hit it home by saying that if we were to put a cap with electrodes on someone's head who is in REM sleep and someone who is awake and alert and problem solving, their brainwave activity is so similar, it's very difficult to tell the difference. So that's how incredibly active the brain is in problem solving and kind of doing this emotional detox, creativity, all kinds of really important things. And so as you're talking about, and I experience the same thing with people who tell me, oh, I don't need that much sleep, this, that, and the other. What happens whenever you cut sleep one way or another? Because we are all magicians in some way, shape, or form. Like if I had a penny for every time that I said, I wish I had more hours in the day, I too could retire. And I imagine that everybody listening has said this at least once in their lifetime. But we do figure out how to make more hours in the day. And the way that most of us do that is by cutting out sleep, whether that means, well, I'll just stay up a little bit later and I'll watch one more episode, or I'll finish those emails, or I'll just set my alarm for earlier and I'll make sure that I hit that project by the end of the deadline. And the reason why I think it's so important to talk about the stages of sleep and when you're getting most deep sleep and most REM sleep is because if you decide to cut one way or another, you are cutting out some very important either physical functions, if we're talking deep, or the emotional and cognitive functions that are happening in REM. And that's very simplistic, but I just want to let people know, like, either way you slice it, you are doing yourself a major disservice.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's good for people to hear because like I said in the beginning, I think people think that you can cannibalize sleep and there's no recourse, there's no issue. And it's like I know for me personally there is. And if you're one of those people out there saying that's not happening to me, you're lying to yourself. You have to there's whether you know it or not, it's not, maybe you're not, intentionally doing it, but it's like people saying I don't need exercise, I'm just fit. It's like, well, have you tried going to the gym? Go try it and then do that for 90 days and get a test sample and see the difference, because
Yeah.
there is something missing there. But I think people just kind of, like you said, they just Chase, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit here because you don't get a lot of sleep.
I try and get 6 hours of sleep,
See, so you're
It's
You're
weird
dying,
though.
bro.
Sometimes, my body's really interesting. Like I take naps a lot when I get home on the weekends, things like that. But it's I tend to wake up before my alarm, so
Yeah.
it's a little bit different. I don't have anything that wakes me up. Obviously, when I wake up at 4, it's still dark outside, so it's not the sun, and so but periodically I get almost 7 hours. I'll go to bed at 9 and wake at 4. That's close,
See,
and
and that's my dad too. And I don't know how to help people like that. I've literally with my father. So my dad went to the doctor. He's 72 and he's like
Mm-hmm.
he's sleeping horribly, horribly. He will fall asleep for a couple hours and then wake up and then he's just awake for 5 or 6 hours in the night, and then he'll fall back asleep, and then he sleeps from like 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. Just random. That's pretty common, but it's like 5 or 6 hours of sleep spread out over 12 hours. And he went to the doctor, not related for sleep. He went for a heart checkup.
Yeah.
And the doctor was looking at his heart, and he sat down, and the doctor says, "Hey, you're not sleeping well." And my dad says, "What? What are you talking about? How do you know that?" And he says, "I'm
Mm-hmm.
looking at your heart. I'm looking at your heart." And he says, and it scared my dad to death. It was one of those things where for 65 years before, he just accepted that he doesn't sleep well and he's just going to be tired, but he didn't think it was killing him. And the doctor's like, "This is killing you. This is killing you, Kendall." And it scared my dad to death. And now he's in this world. It's been about 2 years probably since that happened.
Okay.
Where he's nervous. He's trying to get more sleep. He's tried,
Mhm.
he's trying like CBD, which my dad's, I don't know if that's a religious thing. Is CBD okay for us?
Yeah.
On our religion?
Yeah, as far as I know,
I'm
yes.
not real religious, but my dad's really religious. And so there's things with like marijuana and stuff that he wouldn't touch because of that. But he's trying some things that people have told him, to try. And it's just not working. It's simply not working. And I've told him, darken your room, turn your phone off, don't get on social media 2 hours before bed, all the common things,
Mm-hmm.
but it's just, his body's just not, it's just not cooperating. And like you said, Chase, you want to sleep till 5 or whatever your alarm's set to.
Yeah.
Why are you waking up at 4? How do you change something like that, Leah?
Yeah.
I'm sure that's a very loaded, deep, if, like you said, if we could solve
No, that's
this,
okay.
it's gonna be too expensive,
No, it's okay. Taking the example of your dad. So whenever we talk about 7 to 9 hours, that is for adults. So that would be ages like 18 to 64. As we get older, so 65 and above, people tend to think that they need less sleep, and that's not the case, but it's more so that people simply are getting less sleep. And as we age, that might happen for various different reasons, right? It might be like medical conditions, it might be pain, it might be side effects from pharmaceuticals or medication. Also, one thing that happens is we have a weakened bladder, and so maybe
Mhm.
you're sleeping well and then you get up to go to the bathroom and that kind of throws a wrench in things. So maybe you have a harder time falling back asleep when you are able to fall asleep and to get some of that quality sleep. So those are a few things that we know happen with aging that just make getting good quality sleep more difficult. One of the things that I would recommend if your dad walked into my office is cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, CBTI, and that is the gold standard whenever it comes to treating people who have sleep issues, who are just struggling. And a big piece of it is sleep hygiene, and that's what you talked about. It also is about consistency. It's about lifestyle changes and behavior changes, and I don't know how well or not well your father's following things like that, but that can just be really challenging, right? Like people don't want to make changes to their lifestyle. They don't want to make changes that are going to take them out of their habit or the routine. They like doing what they're doing, and a lot of people just want this magic bullet of being able to sleep better. And at the end of the day, it really is all about having a collection of things that you do, habits, behavioral modifications, environmental modifications that really all add up to getting a good night's rest. And so the thing that stuck out to me the most that you mentioned that your dad does is laying awake in bed at night. And here's something that might seem kind of counterintuitive, but this is a big mistake that I imagine a lot of people are making. And I think it's so important to say you don't know what you don't know. Like we never teach people how to sleep. There's there's very little education that you probably ever get about sleep. Even people who are doctors, they don't get a whole lot of education about sleep. And so I would be surprised if your dad ever came across this advice, but this is what I would say is, and this is for anybody, if you are awake in bed and you know in the next 15 to 20 minutes that you're not going to be able to fall asleep, because sometimes you may wake up in the middle of the night and you're still feeling sleepy and you can just fall right back to sleep. But if you're awake and you know in the next 15 to 20 minutes it ain't happening, what we need to do is we need to get up, get out of bed, go to another environment if you have the luxury of being able to do so, like a living room, keeping the lights dim, and doing something boring. Adult coloring, folding
Reading.
laundry, going through junk mail, things that are boring, reading a magazine, and then doing that activity however long it takes until you feel sleepy, and then we get into bed. And here's why this is so important is folks like your dad, and I imagine a lot of people who are listening right now, when you lay in bed and you're tossing and you're turning and you're clock watching and you're thinking, oh my gosh, I only have 3 more hours, and if I don't fall asleep in that amount of time, then I'm going to be worthless tomorrow. All this is just very anxiety provoking, and it's not conducive to sleep. It's not going to help you fall asleep any faster. In fact, it's going to do the opposite. It's going to be very counterproductive. So our brain is incredible. It is the most impressive device in the entire world, and we still don't know everything that there is to know about it. But at times it can be kind of dumb too. And so we need to teach it that the bed is for what we call the 3 S's: sleep, sex, and sickness. And when we take everything out of the bedroom except for those 3 S's, then the brain starts to learn, oh, well, I don't get to watch TV, or I don't get to send emails, or I don't get to watch TikTok, whatever it is. We have to do those activities outside of the bedroom. So eventually we start to associate bed and sleep, and we create a very strong association. So I used to teach sleep hygiene courses at the VA, and I would have a big whiteboard or a chalkboard, and I would ask my folks, so what are you doing in bed? And I would get, all kinds of answers like, yeah, I'm sending work emails, I'm reading, I'm paying my bank bills, I'm talking to my partner, I'm watching a movie, I'm doing this, and I'll have bed written in the middle. And then each of those things that people tell me that they're doing, I will draw a line off of it. So I'm eating pizza, I'm paying my bills, I'm doing my homework. And I ask people, a lot of times they don't say sleep. I'm like, what's the deal? That should be the most obvious one. Why is no one telling me sleep? And then I have all these lines coming off of bed in the center. And I ask people, okay, so how strong is the association between bed and sleep if we've got all these other things? And the answer is not strong at all, because the brain comes into the bed and it thinks, oh, well, I have all these fun, exciting things to do. And a lot of those things involve dopamine, right? Like if you're watching an exciting TV show or movie show, if you are watching TikTok, like those things are meant to be addicting. They're meant to produce dopamine.
Stimulate,
and dopamine is like, yeah, let's keep doing this. I like this. This is very interesting for me. So that aside, the other thing that we don't want to train our brain to do is to lay in bed and toss and turn and be anxious and frustrated. And so that's why I say, if you're awake in the middle of the night and you know in the next 15 to 20 minutes, you're not going to be able to fall asleep, get up, get out of bed, go to another room, keep the lights dim, and do something boring. So that would not mean screens. If you're someone who gets really into reading, that would also not mean reading, because then that might be very exciting and interesting for the brain. So something boring, and then you go back to bed. And for someone, it sounds like your father has been struggling for a long time. He may fall asleep for a while and then wake back up again. And the key with this is consistency, right? Like we're trying to build a new habit. We're trying to build a new association between bed and sleep, not bed and being awake and being frustrated and tossing and turning, which is the association that he currently has. So I know that it's annoying and all you want to stay is in bed and comfortable and cozy, but every time that this happens, and again, 15 to 20 minutes, you're not going to fall asleep. That's what you need to do. And eventually the brain will learn bed is for sleep.
Yeah.
Bed is for sleep.
I love that. There's a lot in there. That was a lot.
Yes.
And I love it. I love it. I just because he is that personality where I will say, hey, Dad, you need to try this, try this, try this. And he'll be like, you know what, Rick, I'm 72 years old. I want to live. I don't want to be You know, because I'm like, get rid of coffee. He drinks coffee, you know, like he's a cowboy, you know, he's got a ranch. And so he's a coffee drinker. I'm like, Dad, that's a stimulant. If you drink that, don't drink it past 10 a.m. Try some different things, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that's the problem with a lot of us humans, including me, is you want that magic pill, right?
Everybody does.
We want to retire and go travel the world, but we don't want to, you know, budget and work and save and all the things. And it's like, he wants to sleep well, but he doesn't want to, you know, I was just thinking about what you said there with the bladder. You know, I know he says he has to get up and go to the bathroom. It's like, okay, well, I didn't think of this, but it's, and like you said, why are we not
Also,
taught
coffee's a
this? Why is this?
diuretic.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's making you pee plus the stimulant. So it's like, okay, why don't you try to cut liquids out? You know, my 4-year-old, you know, we don't let him drink after 6 p.m. because he'll pee the bed, you know? It's like,
Right.
you know, it's just the way life is. And if we, it's like, okay, Dad, why don't you make some of these lifestyle changes and try them? If this is so debilitating, which I know it is, and it's scaring him,
Right.
you know, it's not even just he's uncomfortable. It is, the doctor told him it's literally killing him. And I think people out there listening don't realize that lack of sleep is deadly. You know, like you said, it doesn't relax your heart. It doesn't relax your veins, you know, all that stuff's just tense, which isn't.
Think about it another way. We use sleep deprivation as a torture technique.
Yeah.
So messed up.
Yeah, I've been to a couple of the Nazi.
It's very effective.
Oh yeah,
I've been to the 3 of the Nazi concentration camps in Europe, and it's like they did tests, you know, and they said this room was to keep them awake and see how long they could keep a person awake before they died. And it's not long. It's not.
No.
It's like a week or something. Like it's a
matter of days.
Yeah, if you kept somebody awake and didn't let them fall asleep, you die in less than a week.
I felt crazy after 36. Like, just start seeing shadows and stuff. Like you're just, you know, you work that long and you're exerting yourself for that long, you start losing it for sure.
Yeah, we just flew in so we got up in Alaska at like, we slept in, but we traveled all day. And anyway, we all got to Utah yesterday, me and my wife and 4 kids and my mom, who's 70. And our conversation from Vegas, we have to drive from Vegas to Utah, which is about 2 hours. It was the last leg of our trip. We'd been awake, you know, basically 24 hours, maybe 26 hours. And we were all like driving down the road, and my mom's like, my 10-year-old in the back says, Dad, I feel like I'm in a dream.
That's exactly what it feels like.
And my wife turned around and she says, honey, you're just tired. You're confused. And he's like, I don't like it. And I'm like, how do you think Daddy feels? I'm trying to stay on the road, you know, like slapping myself. And I don't drink any, I haven't had I haven't had caffeine for like 12 years. Soda, I had a heart ablation. I had an irregular heartbeat. And the doctor came to me and he says, cut out sugar and caffeine. And so it's funny because my mom will buy a candy bar and I'll have a little bite.
And you'll get hyped up, won't you?
Dude, if I have a whole bite of a Snickers, I'm just like cracked out. My heart's bouncing around. It's just uncomfortable. So I'm sitting there trying to stay awake and I don't have any stimulants. And yesterday I ate a Tootsie Roll. My wife's like, have a Tootsie Roll, Rick. Really? She's like, have a Tootsie Roll. We don't want to die. And I'm like, pop it in. I'm like, I'm good to go. I got my Tootsie Roll energy. But it is literally, you get to where I can 1000% tell when I'm sleep deprived.
And, you know, some people are good at telling that and some people aren't. And whenever it comes to being awake for 24 hours, and a lot of us do this, right? Like whether you're a student and you're craving for an all-nighter or you're someone who has a deadline who you have to meet, like there are lots of different reasons why we end up staying up for a long period of time. But there's also research to show that what's happening in the brain and the body and our ability to make decisions and our reaction time is the equivalent of being like low-level drunk.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, my 10-year-old, he says, Dad, I feel like I'm in a dream. And my wife, Gina, says, honey, you're just tired. And he says, no, I don't think that's it. He's like, I just can't focus. I'm confused. And she's like, go to sleep. And my 4-year-old hung out for like an hour. He got to Mesquite, which is what, an hour and a half into the 2-hour trip.
Roughly, yeah.
And he had something in his hand. And he says, Mommy, I'm tired. And my wife says, okay, hand me your thing. She reached back, grabbed it, leaned forward, set it down, turned around, and his head dropped. And she goes, whoa. He literally just fell asleep like instantly, like just his head handed it up and just dropped. and it's like he's done. And that's what's beautiful about kids is they can succumb to it. Adults, I think we fight it and we justify it.
We do.
Kids are just like, I'm tired, daddy, and it's like sleep, and they do it. With an adult, it's like, I've got stuff to do, and it's like, well, that's fine, but like you said, you're cannibalizing something.
Well, and that's a big piece of it too, is that like, I'm hearing this word that's like newer and trendy of like sleep revenge procrastination, but we've been doing this for a long time before it ever had a name, is just we spend so much time commuting, working, like not having enough time for ourselves. So oftentimes the evening is our me time, and maybe you're a caregiver, maybe you have children, maybe you have adult parents that need taken care of. There's a lot of different things that are eating up your time. So usually right before bed is the only time that you may get to yourself. And so we all, not selfishly, want more of that. And then that's what we end up trading instead of bedtime. And it's just, it's hard. It's hard to have control over your schedule and your calendar and all the priorities and people who need your time.
Yeah, if it was easy, everybody would do it, right? And this is the exception, not the rule. And so that, I think that's, it's so important. I actually just I had a colonoscopy a couple weeks ago and never had one before. And I'm at that age, unfortunately. And I was all nervous about it. But when the doctor came in, and I didn't know a lot about it, but I knew a little bit. But every time I go into a surgery, or even my kids or anybody, my grandpa, I'm like, hey, did you get a good night's sleep last night? I asked the doctor. I'm
You
like,
should.
hey, did you?
You absolutely should. Yes.
I'm like, hey, did you get a good night's sleep, last night? Because if not, we can reschedule this.
Yes.
And I literally asked them all that.
No joke. And you should be asking that question.
Because I know how I am. And I say this, I'm like, dude, I know how I am when I haven't got if I fought with my wife last night and got 2 hours of sleep, I shouldn't be doing heart surgery today. I assure you. And I asked him, and I've had a couple. I've actually had one that was like, you know what? It was a long night, and we rescheduled it.
Good on them for admitting that and rescheduling. That's fantastic. And there's a lot of research and statistics out there to show that, yes, when people are sleep deprived, especially what we do to like residents and people who are just learning medicine, the amount of mistakes and medical malpractice just goes through the roof when we're not sleeping well. It really, truly does.
I read another book that said it was about a judge, and they did a case study. You probably maybe know about this, Leah, where they had figured out that if they study judges, and they did a study on judges, if you have your hearing in the morning before noon, you're more like whatever, I don't know the numbers, but you're more likely to get a better sentence or a better result.
Because they're not tired yet?
Because they're not tired and hungry. They said if you wait till the afternoon, the judges consciously are handing out because they're tired and they're hungry. And it's like, and that's also with surgeons. It said if you're ever going to get a surgery, try to get it in the morning, because if you wait till in the afternoon, they're more likely to be tired or hungry.
That makes sense.
And it's like, man, there's obviously, I'm like, this is out there. Can you imagine your life being sentenced a couple more years because the judge is not tired? But that they proved that was happening, and so it's so fascinating to me, and I this is why I love what I do. Like I said, this is a side thing for me, Leah. This is something that I started up to try to help people and get people, more financially and healthy and all this type of stuff, and take them on adventures.
Yeah.
But I love talking to people like you, because there is so much knowledge out there. Our mantra is mentors. So we have a community and we have a bunch of mentors in there, people that come in and teach us. But just talking to you for what, it's been 45 minutes. Like, wow.
Right.
There is so much knowledge that you have on this subject. And I'm so appreciative of people like you that learn this stuff and then teach us and want to go on podcasts.
Yeah.
Take an hour out of your day. Our most precious resource is time.
Non-renewable resource.
And try to help people. That's what you're doing here. You're not getting paid. We're not, it's like you're on here. You want people to sleep better. And you have this knowledge that is so, it's not just, the little basics, but it's, there's things that you've said in here. The one I was thinking of is my dad with pain. He has back pain.
Yeah.
And I don't think he's associating that his back hurts so he can't. I think he does to an extent, but it's like, you got to fix your back if you want to sleep well. You got to fix your bladder.
All connected.
It's a lifestyle. And I think it's like, he's probably tried one or two things and thought, well, I didn't drink coffee afternoon. What's the deal, Rick? And it's like, no, man, you got to go. And I tell this with people. I'm the financial advisor in our community. And it's like, you got to get all these things good, because one little mistake, you get on Amazon one night and go spend $1,000. You just blew it. You just ruined it. And I've been there.
And it's the same thing with sleep, right? Like, you could hear me on all these podcasts. You could read the book. You could do all kinds of things, and you do it for one night and you still have a shitty night's sleep.
Yep.
You're going to be like, oh, well, Dr. Leah doesn't know anything.
Didn't work.
It takes time. Good sleep does not happen overnight. No pun intended. You have to have these habits and these modifications in place and do it consistently, and then you will see the results. And a lot of people don't want to do that.
It's not a sleep diet, right? It's not a sleep diet. It's a sleep lifestyle.
It's a lifestyle.
And I think that's everything. I talk to my kids a lot. My oldest is 13, and we have starting to have a lot of deeper conversations as they get older, and they're mostly homeschooled, right? Just because they're always with us traveling. And I always tell them, I'm like, the competition out there in the world is pretty bad, to be honest, right? And it's because people don't want to put in the work. And I says, that's not something to be afraid of. I love that. I love knowing that I can change my destiny through effort, and it's freeing to me. I think some people look at it and they're like, man, I've got a budget for the next 5 years to be able to retire early. That's horrible. And I look at it like, if I do this for the next, it is possible. And if I'm willing to do what nobody else is willing to do, I'll have a life that nobody else can have. And it's like, this is the cheat code. This is the, if everybody was doing it and not succeeding, then you're scared. But if you see a handful of people living this lifestyle and sleeping well, it's like, I just have to do that. There's the secret. But people want it. We all want, who doesn't? Right. But that's not reality, Yeah. So I love it. I have a couple, but one thing that I wanted to ask you, I was looking, kind of researching on you, and what is Brainspotting? I read this on one of you're on another podcast, and it says battling burnout with Brainspotting and sleep strategies.
Sure. So in a nutshell, Brainspotting is just a really, really cool, interesting therapeutic modality. It's on the newer side. It's been around for several years now. So let me back up a little bit and talk about EMDR. Have you heard about EMDR?
I have
movement
not.
Desensitization and reprocessing.
I've done a lot of it. I was going to ask you about REM sleep, EMDR, and trauma response release.
Never heard of that.
This could be a whole nother episode, you guys.
Really?
Just throwing that out there.
Yeah, love it.
But yes, so EMDR is the kind of like the first iteration. Let me back up even more. There's a lot to say here.
No, you're good. We got time.
So when it comes to, I primarily see trauma. That's how I was trained as a trauma therapist. EMDR can be used for lots of different things. So just take that with a grain of salt as I talk. I'm going to be using a lot of trauma examples. But
because you're trying to help people. For those who aren't listening, again, you're with the FBI.
Yes.
You're trying to help individuals who have gone through traumatic, long hours, traumatic events, and you're trying to help them sleep, not just the regular Joe. These are people who have got nightmares and some very, very deep things that are keeping them awake.
Yes. So the population that I serve are agents, professional staff, joint task force officers, and then family members also fall under that umbrella. I'll also say that everything I'm sharing on this podcast are my own thoughts, feelings, opinions, and behaviors. The FBI is not sponsoring or endorsing this podcast. Back to our regularly programmed show.
Yes.
So before I came to the Bureau, though, I was at the VA. So I was working with our veterans and our active duty. So again, this population is this highly traumatized and population that just sees a lot of things that the normal average human being doesn't see is what I've been spending my whole entire career on. And I think it's important to mention that sleep and trauma go hand in hand, right? Like if you're seeing all these awful things that a human should not be seeing, you may have a hard time sleeping at night. When you're not sleeping at night, you're not performing well. So it's just this cyclical nature.
I think me personally, I associate PTSD, which we've all heard with, your field, of lack of sleep. I just think that they're probably having nightmares. You hear about veterans and it's like that's almost a synonym for me. It's like if you have PTSD, you're probably not sleeping and you're struggling with your thoughts.
Absolutely. So it's one possible symptom that a person could be having if they have post-traumatic stress disorder. But even if you don't have that diagnosis, people are still suffering from nightmares. And one thing that I just want to throw out there, because I think a lot of people don't know this and they think that they need to struggle in silence, we have treatments for nightmares. One of the ones that I find to be incredibly successful is called imagery rehearsal therapy, IRT. And the premise behind it is very simple, but it's hugely effective. So I just want to throw that out there to let people know that if you're struggling with nightmares, this particular therapy is great for repetitive nightmares. So if you're having the same one over and over again, it is incredibly effective. So just want to throw that out there.
I think that's good for people to hear because there's so many different things, like you said, that people could be struggling with: nightmares,
Yes.
pain, fighting with their wife, or spouse, and so I like people to realize that, there is resources.
Yes.
You're not alone. You're not alone in anything. I mean, there's
Right.
somebody out there going through exactly what you're going through, and it's like all you're hurting is yourself if you don't reach out. So please reach out, and we'll get your information at the end. But
Yeah.
there's
Right.
books, there's podcasts, all these things that are. It's not like, oh, I can't sleep. It's like I can't sleep because of nightmares,
Mhm.
and that is something that you can look at. And I didn't realize that.
Absolutely. Yeah. A lot of people don't realize that. So I think it's just important to throw that out there and let people know, and then they can research it themselves and find a provider. But, then a lot of people who have nightmares or then are afraid to sleep. And then we get into sleep avoidance, which is also a big thing that I saw with my veterans is I am so scared to sleep that it's just that I will push it off for as long as I possibly can without giving too much away. I worked with a gentleman who would sleep about 1 hour a night. I'm not really sure how he continued to function and make it through life. We worked together for several months and happy to report that he is now sleeping normally. But
Good.
There are people who can make this huge transition with the proper resources and the proper help. And we do exist out there. We do. So, please reach out. Please find us.
Yeah, I love
It
that.
doesn't have to be me.
You always think of people who can't sleep, not that won't sleep.
Mm-hmm.
So that's even wow. So I'm gonna go back to brain spotting. So you're
Yes.
backing up and I keep cutting you off. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. What I'm saying is I'm coming from a trauma lens.
Yeah, I love it.
EMDR came out in the 1980s. So a lot of people don't realize that it's been around for a super long time. So its founder, Francine Shapiro, she was in her training to become a mental health professional, and she had gotten this diagnosis of cancer. And she goes on this infamous walk on the park because she's just so distressed. She's so upset. She doesn't know what to do about it. And she goes on this walk. And as she's walking, her eyes are moving back and forth as she's walking on the path. And she's just noticing that as she's thinking about this cancer diagnosis and her eyes are moving back and forth, that she starts to feel a little bit better and she's feeling less distressed. And she's like, okay, well, this is weird. There must be something to this. So she brings people into her lab because she's training to be a psychologist. And she asks people, she's trying to replicate what happened to her in the park. She asks them to think about something distressing. And then she moves her fingers across their visual field. So their eyes are moving left and right. So back and forth. And she finds the same thing, that as they're thinking about this distressing thing, that their distress level starts to go down as they're following her eyes back and forth. And eventually this becomes known as bilateral stimulation, a very fancy-dancy word. But what it essentially means is that we are, again, this rudimentary knowledge of what we think we know about how incredibly complex the brain is that the left side of the brain controls the right side of the body, right side of the brain controls the left side of the body. If we move both sides of the body at the same time or stimulate them somehow on both sides, then we can activate both hemispheres of the brain so that they can talk to each other and that we can reprocess what has happened to this individual. And so you can do bilateral stimulation through the eye movement. You can do it if you have headphones on and you play a tone on one side versus the other. There's a lot of different ways to do it. EMDR is great for kids, like they can throw a toy back and forth. Lots of different ways to do it. And it can be done virtually for those listening who may be curious about it. And essentially, what happens with EMDR is we ask the person to choose something that they'd like to work on. And for me, that's almost always a traumatic event. And I ask them to think about this event, and I will do some type of bilateral stimulation. And as I'm doing that, a lot of people describe it as I'm holding the memory in my hands and the memory is sand, and I'm just having a really hard time holding onto this memory. And what we tend to find with EMDR, it's very, very rapid. It's very effective. People typically feel better within 1 to 3 sessions. And with that, when we say better, I don't have a magic wand. I'm not taking away your trauma or your pain or this part of your life story. But what I can do is I can help dull that memory. So a lot of times whenever people bring up a memory that they want to work on in EMDR, oftentimes they're going to have this sympathetic nervous response. So maybe their palms start to sweat, they're feeling sweaty, that their heart is racing, that their stomach hurts, like they're having this physiological reaction. And so when we do EMDR and we've perhaps done a couple of sessions and we're feeling that it's successful, it is that we can bring up the memory without all of this physiological response. So that's one way that it is that we know that we've gotten to our endpoint, is that we are kind of pulling away this physiological response. But also, and I'm going to try and keep it short because I know I'm verbose.
No, you're good.
When something traumatic happens to us in the brain, things go a little bit haywire. So maybe, say for example, you went out to dinner, and that's not an unusual occurrence. It was fine. You went to Applebee's, you had dinner, whatever. You can pull up that memory without having really any emotional response to it. It's neutral. We went to dinner. It's just like any other night. But something, again, traumatic is going to have this huge emotional response with it oftentimes, or it would be very hard to pull it up without any type of emotional response. But also, when you went to Applebee's, you probably had some time, like you knew what was happening with time, like, oh, it's taken a while for the waitress to bring our food out, or like, oh, that was a really quick dinner. So you have an idea of time. Whenever something traumatic happens, our idea of time kind of just goes out the window. And that's oftentimes when people have some type of like flashback or trigger that they feel like it went on forever.
They're
like
stuck in it.
That they're just in it and they're stuck. And another thing that happens is that we have a hard time putting that event in chronological order where it should go. Of, oh yeah, this happened back in 1999, like it belongs back there, but instead it feels like it's right here, right now, kind of getting in the way of me interacting with the world. And so those are a few different ways that EMDR can kind of help the person put that memory back in their filing cabinet where it actually belongs chronologically, and just help them realize that this was one event in a particular time block. It's not happening here. It's not happening now. It's not something that you're frozen in time. So I set all this up because EMDR is the foundation for which Brainspotting was founded. So Brainspotting, I like to think about it as as EMDR's younger, cooler cousin. That's the way that I like to describe it. So with EMDR, the reason why I even came into EMDR was in my training as a psychologist, and this is how it works, we talk a lot. We ask you to talk a lot. That's the majority of what we do in therapy is we talk. When I got to the Bureau, I realized y'all don't want to talk a whole lot whenever it comes to, my veterans, my first responders, my military, like that's just not something that people want to do. They don't want to open up. So I very quickly found EMDR, and it had been a tool that I absolutely loved, and I still do, but Brainspotting has very quickly replaced that. And with EMDR, probably every minute or so, you're asking the person, what's coming up now? What's coming up now? So they are talking, they're letting you know how they're doing. They are kind of narrating the process to you. With Brainspotting, and I think the reason why I find great success with it, and I think that people really like it a lot, is that we have this acronym for the therapist, WAIT. Why am I talking? Because the brain knows how to heal itself. It knows what it needs to do. The therapist needs to set up the correct conditions, and then we get out of the way so the brain can heal itself. Just like if you broke a bone and it will heal itself given the right conditions, you put a cast on it, you give it time. Same thing with the brain. We have to set up those conditions. And so just to kind of give you a little bit of an idea of what Brainspotting might look like, I would ask you to think about the event that you'd like to work on. I'll ask you, where is that you're feeling in your body? So maybe it's, oh, like this just feels so heavy on my heart when I think about this event. And so I will ask you, okay, let's focus on that sensation in the heart, because that's really going to be like our steering wheel essentially. But what I want to do before I mention that is I would like to ask you a question. You're not going to have to give me the answer out loud, so just think about it. But think about the best gift that you've ever gotten in your life. And maybe that was from a holiday, maybe from your kids, maybe from your wife. Thinking about that. And I don't see Chase, but I want him to think about it too. So what did you notice happened when I asked you to think about that?
You get happier. You go from, you go back to that spot. You go back to that time. And you think about that.
Become grateful.
Yeah.
Okay. So let me ask you another question.
It's a positive.
Yeah. This particular question is, did you notice your eyes do anything?
I didn't notice.
As I was thinking,
Chase?
they were probably moving back and forth as I was bouncing from different presents.
Yeah, you're moving from one spot to the other.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And so
I might have
that's
just looked up
often...
and-
I think I was just looking at you. But yeah, I think if I like would have kind of put my head up, I think you would go, it's almost like you're moving from there to there. Yeah.
So exactly. What normally happens is when I ask people this question and like kind of get them to like disconnect from me in our conversation, is that the eyes normally look around, and that is, if you think about it, and this is kind of weird and maybe a little bit gross, but the brain, like the eyes are an outgrowth of the brain. Like we're actually seeing that piece of what is otherwise completely covered up our skull and our skin and hair and everything. So the eyes moving around is showing us that what's happening on the inside of the brain is that it's looking around for the gift folders of maybe Christmas gifts, maybe holiday gifts, maybe anniversary gifts, maybe birthday gifts. It's looking through all these different files, and they may be held in different places. And so when your eyes move around and you're like, oh yeah, I got that gift, then I know that brain spot for your gift is right there.
Yeah.
And we have brain spot. I do live demonstrations all the time because I think it's important for people to know what this therapy might look like and what you might be getting yourself into if you're interested. And the live demonstrations are actually super boring because once we find that brain spot, all I do is ask you to look at that spot, and I go into wait mode. Why am I talking? So I step out of the way and I let the brain process, and it just happens incredibly quickly. And the reason why the therapist steps out of the way and lets the brain do what it needs to do is because the brain functions at incredible speeds. And so if I'm trying to interject and say, how are you feeling now? By the time I've started my sentence and finished my sentence, the brain is on to the next thing. So it's so incredibly rapid and effective, but also I like brain spotting more than EMDR because in real time, if the client tells me I'm feeling a little bit overwhelmed or I don't know, nothing's happening, I can kind of switch gears and use different techniques in real time versus with EMDR, if you're doing it the proper way, it's very structured and very manualized, and you kind of have like a step-by-step that you have to follow versus brain spotting, I think, is a little bit more fluid. So I should let a person know what might be happening to them while they're brain spotting, and then I'll wrap it up because I'm very talkative. But as you're doing brain spotting and we find that particular spot for you, you may see things like you're seeing them on a movie screen in your mind. You may hear things, maybe that's past conversations. For me, sometimes songs have come up when I'm the client doing my own brain spotting. Sometimes there's going to be somatic feelings. So, I'm feeling like a pain in my jaw, like my muscles are getting really tight. So you may feel somatic things. And then every now and again, there may be some movement too. And this is what happened to me during my very first brain spotting session ever. I went away to training to learn how to become a brain spotting therapist. And you have to pair up with someone else and you practice being the therapist and the client. So you know what it's like and you can tell it to other people. And this poor girl that I'm partnered with, I'm like, hey, I think we need to call the coach over. I don't think anything is happening. Like, I'm sorry. And meanwhile, my hand's just going. Like it's just twitching and I'm not doing that. So there could be a combination of things. I've worked with people who they see things and it's very visual for them. For me, when I do it, it's very somatic and I feel things in my body. So I think everybody's different when they brain spot, and I think each brain spotting session is very unique too. But those are just a few things that you may experience in a brain spotting session. And I know that was kind of like a whirlwind of
No, it is a
EMDR,
lot.
brain
Yeah.
spotting.
How do you bring that? So you go through that. How do you bring that into sleep? So what are you trying to do? What's the connection?
So normally, I've made this reputation for myself within the Bureau of being the sleep expert. So I have colleagues all across the country who are like, hey, so-and-so struggling with sleep. Can I refer them to you? And I'm like, yeah, of course. And then normally we start talking, and many, 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 many times sleep is an issue, but what's underlying it is untreated anxiety, depression, trauma, stress. And so what I'll do is I will kind of do this like twofer of, I want to teach you all these sleep hygiene tips, tools, tricks, everything that I have, but also I need to help you in the daytime process through this so that you can get good quality sleep and, back to that cycle again. So that is how I'm using both hand in hand, because it's very rare that it's solely just a sleep problem, especially in my population.
It's kind of like me. So I bring it back to finances, me being the finance mentor, and everybody's like, how do I fix my finances? And I'm like, that's this. You budget, you make more money, spend less, invest the difference, get passive income. But let's set that aside and let's go into, why do you want money? Well, how much money do you want?
What can it do for you? Yes.
What's your number? And they're like, I've never thought about that. I just want more. I want enough. I want it all. And I'm like, no, that's, we got to get into you got to dig into, because if you're unhappy without money, you're going to be unhappy with money. They've proven, you see all these rich celebrities and athletes and stuff who take their own lives. They had money. So if money, it automatically made you happy. So, I think that's like that's what you're saying is you got to go deep inside and get to, so it's like, okay, you can't sleep. Let's make the room cooler. Let's make it dark. Let's turn off the TV. But let's go a little deeper into what's happening inside of your brain that is ultimately also adding up to that non-sleep.
And I want to clarify, I'm not sure who all is listening to this particular podcast. So there may be some people who it really is just a matter of behavioral modifications and environmental modifications and just getting really good at sleep hygiene and being consistent. But in my experience of veterans, first responders, military, that oftentimes it's a combination of the two. And I'm so grateful to have all these tools in my toolkit where I can be that one-stop shop once we get connected.
Yeah, with mine, when I do my financial thing, I have an initial 30 questions. And some of them are, how much do you spend a month? How much do you make a month? How much, what are your, but then there's some that are, how much money do you want? What do you want money for? It's a tool. What do you want it? And like you said, some answer right away. I want $15,000 a month passive income. I want freedom. I want this. And it's like, okay, now we just need to go to work on saving and investing. But there's some that are like, I don't know why I want money. I just am sad. And I think money's causing, lack of money's causing that. And it's like, all right, we got some stuff to unpack over here, before we ever get into budget or anything. So it's the same with sleep. And I think that's good for people to hear because, sleep it's not a little thing. I think people,
foundation of your life.
Like you said, if you take away all my money, I can last longer than 7 days. If you take away my sleep, I die within, I don't know what the number is, but it's very short. It's like, this is something that can kill you. It can take your life, and people need to take it serious.
And not only that, but if we take it to a less extreme degree of, if you're just giving yourself 6 hours or 5 hours a night, which is not unusual at all when I ask people in my audience, that is a silent killer. It's slowly killing you. That is increasing your risk for obesity, for diabetes, for heart disease, for stroke. We didn't even talk about neurodegenerative disorders like Alzheimer's. So it's this silent killer that you want to have a good life. You want to be healthy. You only get one brain and one body. You better be taking good care of it. And sleep is simple. And you also have the opportunity for it every night. So why don't you try and capitalize on that?
I told my buddy the other day, one of my favorite quotes or sayings is, a healthy man has a million problems, an unhealthy man has one. and that's such a powerful statement because he's going through some health issues and it's all he can think about. And
Exactly.
it's not sleep, but I'm sure sleep's in there actually with what he's going through. But it's one of those things where if you're unhealthy, it consumes you. It consumes everything that you think about and that you do and who you
Mhm.
are. Like Chase, you've gone through some physical stuff the last,
Oh yeah.
year or so with some of the things you're going through, and it's debilitating.
Hmm.
And so I think people really need to, if you're sleeping, 7, 8 hours and you're doing fine, good for you. Keep doing it. Keep doing what you're doing. And if you're not, then like you said, just dig a little deeper. And if it's 5 hours, you're close. I tell people I had a new girl that I'm coaching on finances right before I went to Alaska, and say there's 10 steps. I don't have steps, but say there's 10 steps. She's on like 7. And I'm like,
Nice.
good for you. She's a single mom, 4 kids. I told you about her.
Yeah.
Amazing. And I'm like, you're amazing. You're doing awesome. We can tweak this. I says, I could have you retired in 7 years, 5 to 7 years, retired.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And I'm like, a lot of people are 20 years, I don't even,
That got themselves into some predicaments.
Yeah, but we can still get there.
Yeah.
But it's like you're on a lot longer journey. If you're sleeping 2 or 3 hours, there's probably been a lot of things that have gotten you to that point. Because naturally, I have a little baby girl that's 6 months old. She sleeps like a baby, right? There's the saying, sleeps like a baby.
Ooh.
Yeah.
It's like she isn't carrying all this baggage and stuff that we pick up along the way that is just messing us up. So you got to unwind that and rewind that. And there's people who are going to be a lot longer road. And that's just the way where it is. But go out there and there is hope.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, honestly,
Yes.
I mean, even though I don't sleep like fantastic, it used to be less. And, because of all the traumatic things that had happened and, getting an explosion and stuff. But over the years, little things like not having a TV in my room or putting my phone on a charger that's far away from my bed, not on my nightstand, so I can't even grab for it, and situation, things like that. My room, literally, I never go in it unless I'm going to sleep or to change.
Well, I know one thing you do, which I don't necessarily, but is grounding. You're talking about that. And, I'm not like that. You know that. I always say, like you asked me, I'm going to some of sharks in Hawaii in a few days. And he's like, do you feel their energy? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what that means. I guess if they bit me, I'd probably feel their energy. But I just don't process things that way.
I get you.
But I also understand what you're saying. And if you go outside and you walk around in the grass and you take 20 minutes of just your own thoughts and not all the other emails and phone calls, it's going to add up and it's going to put deposits into your bank account and that's going to help you sleep better.
Yeah.
And so I understand what that is. And my meditation isn't sitting there, kind of, that type of thing, but it could be sitting on a mountainside watching a sunset or fishing in a river.
Great meditation.
Whatever your meditation is, but it's like there's these little cheat codes that can add up and really change your life. And I think people listening, I have a partner here, his name's Woody. And I walked in, I've been gone for 2 months. And I walked in, he says, hey man, I'm leaving in 5 seconds. And I said, good, that's perfect for me. Yeah. And I says, I'm doing a podcast. And he says, with who? And I says, an FBI sleep specialist. And he's like, oh my gosh, I want to listen to this one. I'm excited. Didn't he?
Yeah.
Good.
Because that's something that so many people struggle with.
Oh yeah.
And they just don't know where to go.
About it.
They're not, we're big, tough men. I don't know, a lot of us are trying to be big, tough men or quiet, I have a family member, I won't get too specific, but they're just submissive. They're just quiet and they just are like, this is the way it is, and she's just kind of accepted it. And it's like, no, you get one life. Let's and I think that's good for people to hear. So
stay in the fight.
Yeah, 100%. I was going to look through my notes. Is there anything you want to add to this, Leah, before I
just want to say thank you to Chase and like that little interaction that you guys just had about, oh, I'm not a very good sleeper, but I have done these little things and these little things consistently have gotten me to a better place. And I think that that's the key, right? Like if you read the book and you do every single thing in it, and you have to figure out because you'll probably get frustrated if you try and do like this whole entire overhaul makeover on your sleep. If you just pick 1 or 2 small things, put them into practice for a little while, see how they work for you, add one more small thing once those other things become habits, and eventually you will get to a better place. It does not take this complete construction overhaul. You can do it. You
And
can
I
do it.
think that's a good point. I always tell people on my financial journey, because I was bad with money. I lost everything in the recession. I was literally homeless with my wife and child. And so I've been there where but I learned, one of my stories I tell is I started getting a little bit of money saved up, and I had like 20 grand saved under my mattress because I was afraid of banks, and it's a whole nother story. But there was a Jeep for sale up the road, and it was on my way home, and I could drive past the Jeep, and it was 1 mile home. But I wanted that Jeep, and I wanted to buy it, and I had the cash, and I justified why I deserved it, and I've worked hard for the last couple of years. And I'm like, no, but I ended up not being able to drive past that Jeep. I would turn left and go clear around, triple the way home.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Because I learned that I'm the fat kid and I can't go in the candy store. It's like it's not that I'm better, or it's like if I go into a candy store, I will buy candy. So I just have to avoid it. And so it's like, figure out these little tricks for your
Yes.
personality.
Knowing yourself.
Yeah, it's
Being
like, I
aware is
love
key.
coffee. I don't, but my wife loves coffee. She will never give it up.
Mm.
She would rather die.
Mhm.
But it's like, okay, so have coffee before 10 a.m. and then cut it off if she was having sleep issues. It's
Yeah.
like, figure out how to have your cake and eat it too, best you can.
Mhm.
And there's little ways to get around our personalities and our individual weaknesses that still can get you to the finish line of what you're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
And so I love that you said that. And Chase is good about that. I watch him a lot where he's very thought out. He's very goes into that kind of stuff to where you do try to problem solve it out.
Oh yeah, totally.
further
I mean, I go by this, quote that everything measurable can be improved. And so, I kind of evaluate anything that feels like it might be lacking and try to improve it, if I
Yeah.
can.
Right.
Sometimes it's like, I don't know what I'm going to do with that.
For sure.
But for the most
We're
part,
human, right?
yeah,
We're
you
human.
can-
And there's nights where, like you said, we've all, every single, I would have to say everybody's been there where you're looking at the clock and you're like,
Mhm.
I've got
that's
5 hours.
my most despised moments. It's rough.
There is nothing worse than laying
Don't
in
do
bed,
it.
knowing you need to sleep and
Yeah.
watching the clock. And now I'm going to get up. Now I know. It's like, I just
Yep.
lay there in bed and I'm like, you're going to be miserable for 3 hours. And it's
Yeah.
like, no, get up, get out of the room, go do something that's boring.
Mhm.
And let's try that. Let's try that. And maybe that works. And then it's like, whoa, this is, and like you said, try these and go out there and research. If you're, one of the studies that I bring up a lot is it's like 90% of us, 80 something percent of us, I believe, don't read books after high school or college.
Yeah, something like that.
Wow.
pretty
We're
high.
like, we know everything. We're
Yeah.
done. We made it. And it's like, what? Are you crazy? And don't just listen to the podcast. Don't just read the book. You have to do. You have to go,
Yes.
and it's going to be hard, and it might be difficult, and it might take months or years. But if it can change your life and save your life, what are you doing? Go do it.
Yeah.
Go start.
Mhm.
You have to be okay with that 1% increase. If just making slow changes will get you there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If you don't, some people can do that 180, but not
Right.
everybody can.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I would also say too, what do you have to lose? Like, you have an opportunity to sleep every single night.
Mm-hmm. And that's what my buddy said at the CPAP. There was a couple guys there that were like, dude, I don't sleep well. And he's like, what do you have to lose?
Yeah.
What do you have to lose? Go try one. If it doesn't work, go on to the next thing.
Yep.
And it's like,
Yeah.
it's such a simple thing, but yeah, we, unfortunately, a lot of us don't do it. So, is there anything else, Leah, that I didn't miss? I'm trying to think. I'm looking through my notes. I think we touched on this overall, but like mental health, your mental health is directly tied
Oh, 100%.
to your sleep. I don't think, we have
Yes.
a big following in our community of people that are, working on their mental health, whatever that may be. And I think that for them to realize that sleep is a big factor on that is so important.
Yeah.
And it's good for me to hear. I didn't really associate it as much as I probably should have, but it is.
Absolutely. Sleep is directly tied to levels of anxiety and depression, but also, if we're getting into more serious conditions like bipolar disorder and schizophrenia, but also too, when we're not sleeping, we're not thinking, we're not in our right mind. And when we're not in our right mind, there's an association between not getting enough sleep that you need and suicide risk.
Yeah, and it's like I always tell, it's like when you're, like you said, it's all almost associated with being drunk.
Yes.
And I always tell, it's like if you're not in control, who is?
Mhm.
And if you're just kind of spacing out like my child. You know, he says, I don't feel right. I feel like I'm in a dream. And it's like, you just can't function like that long term.
Yep.
Mm-mm.
Well, thanks, Leah. I appreciate you being on. So how do people find you? I know your new book, it's called If Sleep Was a Drug. When does that come out? In October? Is that what I read?
Oh, nice.
October 1st, 2025 is Sleep or a Drug. That's coming out. I'm so excited.
That's awesome. Is that your first book?
It is my first book.
Did you? So I know we got recommended by Adam Davis. Did he help you with that?
Yes, it's funny that you asked that, because I was going to say the person who has so far read my book a couple of times, who's editing it, is Adam Davis. And he's like, Leah, I can't tell you how much my sleep has improved just because I'm forced to read your book multiple different times.
Yeah. The
amount of stuff he's probably learned off of all the people he's helped write their books.
Yeah, we just had him on. Chase had found him. We just had him on the other day, and
he's wonderful.
Awesome individual. I want to look into doing something with him too as well. But and then Chase said you're actually on Trent Segmiller's. You were on One's Ready, right?
One's Ready.
Podcast.
I was. We had so much fun over there.
Yeah, so he's related to Chase. They're both Segmillers. So
cool.
They're family.
Trent is one of the 4 that are on there. Yeah.
So yeah, we had him on here
world.
as well. So we're all in there together. But yeah, I love it. And I tell everybody this, that comes on here, and I appreciate your time. I appreciate you,
Thank you.
doing what you do, and not even just learning it, but sharing it and going outside of the FBI and trying to help people with what you've learned in that organization. And I'm excited for your book. I'm definitely going to check it out. How do people find you? So
everywhere. Dr. Leah Kaylor. drleahkaylor.com, LinkedIn, social media. Yep.
Awesome. Okay.
All across
I
the board.
appreciate you. I'm going to have my wife reach out to you and get you on hers as well. Hers is a women's podcast. It's called Revitalized Womanhood.
Cool.
And she's I think you'd be amazing for her, and what like I said, this is for everybody.
Mhm.
It's beautiful because
everybody sleeps.
Yeah, everybody
Sure,
you
needs to.
hope.
Well, and just think about how sleep deprived a lot of women, a lot of mothers are.
Oh,
like
100%.
I mean,
my
Yeah.
Gina's
and
got
she
the ability.
justifies it.
Yeah.
I literally, she's one where I'm like, hey, babe, you probably should get another couple hours of sleep. She's like, I'd love to,
Yeah.
I've got a newborn,
Mhm.
come breastfeed her, I'm like, I can't, sorry, we're out. So,
man.
all right. Well, I appreciate you coming on. Thank you so much. I'm going to hit stop here and then, all right. So there you have it. My conversation with Dr. Leah Kaylor. Again, this is what I love about this position that I'm in, where I get to interview these people. There's so much to learn. And I just, every time when I think, I don't know what this podcast is going to be about, I'm not sure, how are we going to talk for an hour about sleep, honestly. And man, I get into it and I could have talked for 2 or 3 hours. It was just, very, very informative. These people, what's cool is they know, you ask them these questions. It's like CPAP. I never knew what CPAP stood for. And she just rolls it out. These people are trained. They know what they're doing. She's been with the FBI for years, helping these high stress situations for these people and help them find sleep. And then she's bringing this to the world. So if you want to follow Leah, you can find her again on her social media, things like that. But also her new book, If Sleep Was a Drug, will be coming out October 1st. Check that out. I'm going to take a lot of this information. I'm going to make sure my couple friends and my father listen to this episode and take notes and try to, again, find better sleep. It's so important. You need it. It's about your health. And who doesn't need, to work on their health and always be trying to dial that in and get better. So thank you, Dr. Leah, for your time. I sincerely appreciate it. Check it out, and hope you have a great weekend. Bye.